Returning to childhood environments during the holidays activates dormant emotional patterns, people-pleasing, shutdown, conflict avoidance, or overreaction. This isn't just psychological, it's neurological. Stresses light up your limbic system and suppress your prefrontal cortex, pulling you back into old, unresolved identity loops. That's why so many adults feel ashamed of how they act or react when they are home. This episode unpacks the brain science of holiday regression and offers practical ways to stay grounded in your present-day self. Have you ever noticed the moment you walk into your family's house for the holidays? Your mind starts dismantling the adult you and activating a version of you that you thought had healed. If you don't know how to stop it, you'll walk out days later wondering why you acted like someone you swore you'd outgrown. This isn't just a shift in mood, it's neuroscience working against you. Every year, millions of adults leave family gatherings frustrated with themselves, believing they failed some personal test but in truth their brain was an old script from decades ago. Familiar voices, smells, even the way the light hits the living room. And these activations are so powerful that they override the mind's capacity for reasoning and self-control, leading to reactions that take you back to your teenage years. But here's the thing, you can't keep that from happening, and you don't need years of therapy to do it. By the end of this episode, you will have a 3-step mind management plan to stay grounded during holiday visits, so you leave with your confidence intact before your next trip home. Before we continue, if you are enjoying this conversation, tap follow and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And if someone you know could benefit from what we're covering today, share this episode with them. It could be the encouragement they need right now. Holiday visits don't just make you nostalgic, they can make you get stuck in a messy mind-brain cycle. And the result? Your adult brain functions like a teenager's with the same emotional reflexes you thought you'd outgrown. And this isn't theory, it's actually what happens when old environmental triggers wake up unresolved dormant psychoneurobiological pathways. So research in environmental neuroscience shows that familiar cues like the smell of your childhood kitchen, the exact tone in a parent's voice, or the creak of a hallway floorboard can reactivate embedded thought trees in the non-conscious mind. And these aren't just memories, they're full sensory emotional networks that influence how you react before you even know it's happening. A harmless comment about how you load the dishwasher can suddenly feel like a criticism of your entire life. Your brain links it to a pattern built years ago, and your responses come from that old, unresolved wiring rather than your present-day reasoning. One client told me she was a confident, decisive leader at work. At her parents' holiday table, she found herself sitting quietly, smiling and nodding at everything. When we unpacked it, she realized that her brain network had slipped into the same keep the peace mode that she used as a teenager to avoid conflict. That mode activated within the first 5 minutes of arriving. If you don't catch this early, the after effects can linger for days, even weeks. You may feel drained, irritable, overly self-critical long after you've gone home. And in these cases, the unresolved midbrain pathway hasn't yet switched back to your present identity. Studies using fMRI scans show that being in a childhood home can light up the amygdala, which is your brain's movie streaming library of emotional responses, up to 40% more than in neutral environments. That 40% increase correlates with a measurable dip in prefrontal cortex activity, and that's the area that's activated when we tap into the learning and wise parts of our mind that help us reason. This means healthy decision-making and self-control goes out the door. Here's your first line of defense. Before you travel, pick one anchor phrase, something like, I'm the adult version of me. Practice saying it out loud whenever you imagine a known trigger. This primes the learning part of our mind to activate the prefrontal cortex, and this combination helps you hold ground when that trigger shows up in real life, like an insurance policy. Skipping this step leaves your brain totally open to slipping into autopilot before you've even unpacked your bag. Most people fall into these old patterns without even realizing it. I've seen CEOs, therapists, and high-performing athletes walk straight into regression the moment they hear a certain phrase or smell a familiar holiday dish. Think about it. You're not just facing one trigger, you're surrounded by dozens at once. The decorations you've seen since childhood, the background TV playing the same shows, the kitchen noises, the family phrases, each one reinforces the old network, making it harder to stay anchored in who you are. Holiday visits can feel emotionally loaded because you're in a psychoneurobiological environment built for the younger version of you. Without preparation, that version will take over. Even with an anchor phrase in place, certain rooms, voices, and moments can override your best preparation. And when that happens, it's not subtle. It's a full neural takeover that can happen in seconds. In the next segment, I'll show you how that hijack works and the one mistake that makes it worse. Picture this. You're standing in the kitchen where you grew up, holding a glass of wine, the smell from the stove, the sound of your dad's voice in the next room, and then you hear your sibling say something minor. Before you even register it, that's not choice, that's activation allowing your limbic system to lead the conversation. However, your conscious mind has the power to override that activation. The limbic system, the emotional movie streaming library in your brain, can override the prefrontal cortex in less than a second when triggered by cues from your past. It's similar to a 3D movie where the narrative, subtitles, and perceptions of your childhood are being replayed in 3D. In these moments, your responses are driven by stored emotional patterns, not deliberate thought. And for some, this means snapping back with sarcasm. For others, it's retreating into silence. Both reactions come from the same problem. Your brain reverts to the coping style that worked when you were younger, whether that was confrontation or withdrawal. I've seen people spend entire visits over-accommodating, agreeing to plans they do not enjoy, or doing chores they didn't sign up for. And in many cases, their brain still connects compliance with safety in that environment. Every time you respond from that old, unresolved, toxic thought pattern, you strengthen the wiring that keeps it alive. And over the years, this makes it harder to access your present identity during future visits. And the harder it gets, the more unchangeable it feels and the more difficult and smaller your window for change actually becomes. But there's always hope because you have veto power and you can direct neuroplastic changes in your mind, brain, and body. You can choose to change this pattern. You control your brain and biology, not the other way around. To break and rewire this habit, you need to interrupt the automatic sequence. One way is using a 5-minute pre-visit Neurocycle session, where you gather, reflect, write, recheck, and active reach. This primes your mind to spot the moment an old pattern starts and shift into a chosen response, kind of like an insurance policy for those moments you feel activated. During the 5-minute pre-visit Neurocycle, add a physical anchor, something small like shifting posture, touching your watch, or changing your breathing. So when you feel the activation rising, you can quickly exit reactive mode by using the physical trigger. This enables you to slow your reaction down, signals your nervous system and the prefrontal cortex to re-engage in the correct way, just long enough for you to take control and choose your reaction. And key to all of this is to learn a powerful truth. No one can make you angry, sad, or worked up. You choose to let them. This is a hard but empowering fact because it keeps you in the driver's seat of your life. Studies on embodied cognition show that these intentional physical actions, like shifting your posture, can influence emotional states and decision-making in real time. And in the holiday setting, that can be the difference between replaying an old argument and steering the moment in a healthier direction. Some people tell me they stay quiet because it seems easier. The silence might feel easier in the moment, yet your psychoneurobiology still registers the stress and it builds up over the visit. Instead of full withdrawal, use a micro-response, a short, neutral phrase, one that you plan in step 5 of the Neurocycle, the active reach. This phrase, which could be as simple as, I am enough, acknowledges the moment without re-entering the old dynamic. It keeps you present without reigniting that old pattern. Even people with years of personal growth get pulled into these responses. I've worked with leaders, therapists, and athletes who all noticed themselves defaulting to outdated habits within minutes of arriving. One client, a competitive coach, found himself accepting criticism from a relative without responding, the same dynamic he had at the age 14. After practicing the pre-visit Neurocycle a few times, he was able to pull on the physical anchor and say the active reach phrase in his head, enabling him to address it calmly in the moment. His mind insurance kicked in. So the fix has 2 parts. Number 1, prime your awareness before you arrive using the pre-visit neurocycle. And then number 2, use an in-the-moment anchor to hold your ground. Together, these are going to reduce the chance of regression dramatically. Next, we'll address the most common objections and why the people who think they are immune to regression are often the ones most at risk. By this point, you may be thinking one of these 3 things. And if any of these sound like you, you'll want to listen closely. The people most certain they are immune to holiday regression are often the ones most deeply caught in it. First, some may say, my family isn't toxic, we just bicker. But even light bickering can activate the same psychoneurobiological patterns that formed in adolescence, especially if there has never been a resolution or discussion around them. This isn't about labels, it's about the brain's reflexive response to familiar cues. Remember, the brain doesn't think, it only responds to predictive patterns. So if these patterns haven't been reconstructed, they will be triggered. Research shows that the emotional tone of interactions matters much more than the intensity. A mild familiar jab can still pull you into an old role before you notice. One client told me her brother's yearly joking remark about her cooking always left her quiet for the rest of the night. She didn't realize it was an old teenage defense pattern resurfacing. Others believe silence may seem easier in the moment, yet your nervous system still reacts internally. That unspoken tension can keep stress hormones elevated for hours. Instead of full withdrawal, choose one neutral statement you can use if needed, like, noted, or let's circle back. You can work these out in your pre-visit neurocycle. This signals engagement without re-entering the old script. I've seen this small change shift entire visits for people who once thought silence was their safest option. I've also seen this in my own life. And then there's the person who says, I feel fine during visits. That means I've outgrown this. Sometimes regression is subtle. You might leave feeling unusually tired, over-accommodating, or disconnected, even if there's no obvious conflict. fMRI studies reveal that familiar environments can alter brain activation patterns without triggering conscious distress. All toxic habits are activated, and all this is copied and placed into the brain, and a computed and predictable loop is activated. One woman I worked with realized she'd spent 3 days doing tasks for relatives and agreeing to plans she didn't want, leaving her resentful and totally exhausted. The longer you go without addressing these patterns, the more they embed. Every year you wait, the work to shift them gets harder, and the grip of the old identity is just going to tighten. A final one I hear often is, I've done years of personal work, this doesn't apply to me. In reality, most of my clients, from CEOs to therapists to elite athletes, are shocked at how quickly old responses surface. This isn't a measure of your growth. It's a reflection of how strongly our perceptions of toxic early experiences we go through get processed by the mind into our psychoneurobiology as network maps. So whether your pattern is bickering, shutting down, over-accommodating, or assuming you're unaffected, the mechanism is still the same. Old cues drive old responses. The only way forward is to interrupt that sequence with awareness and deliberate action. In the next section, I'll give you a checklist you can use before, during, and after your holiday visit to stay grounded in your present identity. So let's make this practical. Here's a simple science-backed checklist you can follow before, during, and after your holiday visit to keep you present. Before you go, write down 3 pre-visit trigger mapping. Pre-visit trigger mapping. So before you go, write down 3 specific triggers you know you'll encounter. A phrase, a smell, or a location in the house, something like that. For example, maybe your aunt's comment about your career, the smell of a certain dish, or standing in the hallway where family arguments happened. Next, do the 5-minute pre-visit neurocycle to each one. And for the active reach, write a response you want to have instead. This primes your mind to recognize and redirect when the moment comes. Studies on implementation intentions show this kind of pre-commitment increases follow-through by over 200%. Most people I've worked with are surprised at how much easier it is to stay present when they've done this in advance. In fact, one client told me she mapped her top triggers, and when she heard her father's predictable, "So what's your plan for next year?" she was ready with a calm, practiced reply instead of freezing like she used to. Once you're there, so step 2, in-visit micro resets. So once you're there, in the house, use micro resets whenever you feel your body react. That could be shifting your posture, taking a slow breath, or touching a personal item. Pair it with your anchor phrases from earlier, and this gives your prefrontal cortex a split second to re-engage before the old pattern runs the show. One client told me her micro reset was running her fingers over a watch band. It reminded her she was in the present, not the past. Without this, you're far more likely to react on autopilot and regret it. Another person used a glass of water as her anchor. Each sip was a pause that kept her from snapping back. Step 3, reconceptualization. Within 48 hours of leaving, set aside 10 minutes to journal or voice note the moments that felt like regressions. Identify the trigger, your reaction, and one alternative you could use next time. Do a 5-minute post-visit Neurocycle to do this. Neuroscience research shows that reflecting soon after an event strengthens new wiring and weakens the old pattern. Skipping this step lets the old wiring stay dominant, making the next visit even harder to navigate. If it helps, turn these steps into a note on your phone titled Holiday Grounding Plan. Keep it visible before, during, and after the trip. The constant reminder reinforces your intention and lowers the brain's default to past responses. You can even set reminders to pop up before the events like family dinner or gift exchanges when triggers are most likely to appear. And the more you manage your mind like this, the more you get back in control. It's about creating enough space between trigger and reaction for you to choose who shows up. Even small shifts compound over time into lasting change. And you are not alone in needing this. I have helped people from all walks who have seen dramatic improvement using these exact steps. Most tell me the difference shows up not only during the visit, but in how they feel after, lighter, more in control, and less self-critical. So, your 3 steps are: do a pre-visit Neurocycle before your visit, reset in the moment, and do a post-visit Neurocycle afterwards. Do them all, and you'll walk away from the holidays with your confidence intact. Skip them, and you'll risk sliding back into patterns you've worked years to change, making them harder to undo later. In the final section, I'll recap the big takeaways from today and show you how to put this plan into action right away. Holiday visits have the power to pull your brain back into old patterns in seconds. The cues are everywhere: a voice, a smell, a room you haven't stood in for years. Left unaddressed, those cues can start running the show before you're even aware of it. And it doesn't take much. Sometimes just a familiar glance or an inside joke can pull you in. We began with the brain science, how the limbic system is activated in familiar environments by reactivating deeply stored patterns that play like a 3D movie when we are in the moment, and how the prefrontal cortex can temporarily go offline when those cues appear. Then we explored what this looks like in real life. The sharp comeback to a sibling, the quiet withdrawal at the dinner table, the over-accommodation that leaves you drained. In segment B, we looked at what happens in those microseconds when your body reacts and how to use in-the-moment anchors to slow the process. In segment C, I broke down the most common objections, from "we just bicker" to "I feel fine so this doesn't apply to me," and reframed them with proof and alternatives. Finally, the action block gave you a 3-step holiday grounding plan, doing the pre-visit Neurocycle to map triggers before the trip, using the micro resets while you're there, and doing the post-visit Neurocycle afterwards to lock in new patterns. If you only remember one thing, remember this: every trigger is an invitation to either repeat the past or practice the present. Picture yourself in that moment. Someone makes the usual remark about your choices, you feel the old heat rising, but this time you pause, use your anchor, and answer in a way you'll be proud of later. And that's the difference between leaving with a sense of control and leaving with the same frustration you felt for years. This isn't about avoiding family or distancing yourself from people you care about. It's about showing up as your present-day self, even in the middle of environments designed to bring back an earlier version of you. That way you can leave the holidays feeling proud of how you handled moments that might once have totally derailed you, and that pride can carry into how you show up in work, relationships, and every other area of your life. There's a spillover effect. What's the alternative? You walk away repeating old dynamics, reinforcing them, and making it harder to change next time. They become more automatic and less conscious, and that's when they start influencing more than just holiday gatherings. They can seep into other interactions where you least expect it. I've worked with CEOs, new parents, healthcare workers, artists, all of them, surprised at how quickly their old coping styles returned in a holiday setting. The ones who prepared using these exact tools noticed a difference, not just during the visit, but in the weeks that followed. Some told me they felt lighter, more connected, and more capable in completely unrelated situations afterwards. That's why I created the Help in a Hurry course with real-life examples and prompts. It's designed to help you act on what you learned today, not just think about it. You can get it right now. Just go to helpinahurrycourse.com. The earlier you prepare, the more effective it is, and the better chance you stay anchored in who you are. When we started today, I told you your brain can start dismantling the adult and rebuilding the teenager you were the moment you step into your family's house. Now you know how to keep that from happening. The science is on your side, and now so is the plan. Use it, and you'll walk away from the holidays with your confidence intact and a new sense of control you can carry into every part of your life. I'll see you again next time.